we are getting back to the Duramax truck because the transmission has finally arrived. It's been a long time coming, but it's here. It looks super good. It's all powder coated. It's got a fancy pan on it and fancy PTO covers. It's all brand new. Super pumped. Got the triple disc converter with a bunch of billet parts in it. And got the billet ATS flex plate and the fluid dampener both ready to go on. So I think on this video, definitely gonna make some big progress. I got some other things to show you guys, like the PCM and TCM mount, and might get the core support in. We're going to get the transmission in, start building the transmission cross member, and then I think it's going to be either plumbing time for the radiator and the intercooler, or yeah, I'm not sure. So we'll see where we end up on this and where we decide to call the video good for now. But one little update, got the fuel system semi on. Need to determine how we're going to do the return lines, because I don't really want to run the factory return lines, but we'll play that by ear. I just got the rear main seal installed using the fancy tool for that, and now it's time to install the flex plate, which is, I don't know, I'm just excited for it. All of this stuff is super covered in dust because it's been sitting so long, but it is finally happening, and I think the transmission is getting bolted up to the engine today, and we can start designing the Crossmember, which will be very exciting. So stand by. Under the truck here and getting ready to install this flex plate to that crankshaft. I don't really know what's worth showing, but it just want to make sure I do everything correctly. Check out this thing of beauty. Very excited about this because, I don't know, who doesn't get excited about shiny billet parts. I'm going to put a little bit of Loctite on hardware here. Start with 2. Get this thing oriented correctly. So, fun little note, these are like one-time use torque to yield bolts. So I'm gonna use a breaker bar with a degree indicator, but I got this one I randomly found. You can see it. It says GM Performance, which is pretty sweet to be using it on a GM kind of product in a Ford. That's fun. But I gotta reorient this floor jack because it's definitely gonna be in my way. I'm trying to tighten these down, and I need to figure out where to put my barring tool or flywheel flex plate locking tool. We got the transmission installed and also installed the transfer case. It hasn't been rebuilt yet and done, all the things that needs to happen to it, but it has been installed along with the adapter for that, which I think I'm going to change down the road. I think we're going to come up with our own due to some reasons I can get into later. But in the meantime, been designing and testing, designing the transmission crossmember for the Allison transmission. So instead of modifying, like the E4OD crossmember or a ZF5 crossmember or even our ZF6 crossmember, I wanted to come up with a new, complete transmission crossmember that is specific for the Allison transmission. So it has been designed. We cut it out on our CNC Plaz table. Ignore that sound. So cutouts are not, all we do is prototype on the Plaz table, and then once the design is finalized, we have it all laser cut and CNC press brake work done, and then we weld it all in-house. So the prototypes it works good for prototyping, and it works great for one-off stuff, but it's just not as clean and tidy as a laser. But got it all cut out, and Grant got it all bent up and tacked together. So we've got our 2 frame brackets, and this one, these little tabs will get cut out so that, this hole is here, so that the brake lines and fuel lines and wiring harness can fit through. Maybe not the fuel lines, those we might route differently, but anyways, that's what this is here for. And yeah, so now, before finish welding all of this, I'm going to put it up in the truck and test it out, because this is really the first time, and I'm super excited because, believe it or not, this stuff takes a really long time to design and just go through all the processes in your head and on the computer and making it reproducible and just all the things. So it's been quite a bit of work to get to this point, and now I'm stoked to actually test it out. So I'm going to cut out those tabs like I was talking about, and then get some lights so that you guys can see, and mock it up in the truck. Hopefully it actually fits. I guess first off, I'll show you guys what we got going on here real quick, and then I'll start putting that cross member in to mock it up. So you can see here, we've got the transmission bolted up to the Duramax. Got plenty of room up there. We're a little close right up here, but it's lifted just a bit more than it needs to be. Then here you can see our adapter for the transfer case that I'll talk about more later, but there's our adapter, and then this is our manual shift Super Duty transfer case. It is an NP271F. So the other Super Duties came with an NP273F, and those were electric shift, which I'm not opposed to, but since this already has these trucks have a floor shifter for the transfer case, I wanted to keep it manual shift. So that's why we went with this one. And as you can tell, it has not been rebuilt. It still has the junkyard tag on it. So it will be coming back out and getting torn down, cases powder coated to match the engine and transmission, and get it rebuilt and freshened up. But I wanted to get the transmission cross member done first, make sure we got enough clearance for our front drive shaft and all that good stuff. So that is why it is essentially just mocked up in here for now. But without further ado, let's bolt up these new brackets here. On this one, you can see cut out those two little pieces just to be able to clear the lines. And if you can see up here, you can see we've got our wiring harness that's been rewrapped from the previous iteration, and the brake line here, and this is for the fuel pump. It's all going to get wrapped together, but this was temporary and kind of an afterthought when we did the power stroke. So for now, we're going to just leave it as is, and wiring and all of that stuff is going to be a future project. Because this is just mock-up, don't get mad at me. I'm not going to bolt it in like exactly by the book, but it will work for testing. I'm going to figure out whether this is going to work or not, and I will get back to you guys in a few. Stand by. Well, we needed to make a few changes to the transmission crossmember to account for some angles that I didn't really see the first time, so made those changes and cut it out on our CNC plas table, bent it up on the press brake, and it fits. So this is the semi-finished product here that Grant is installing the plates that go in the frame, but he got it all welded up yesterday and it's all gusseted and looks really good. Lines up really good, and yeah, all in all, I'm pretty happy with how it's turned out. One thing, you know, because there are some like tight tolerances with this, dealing with different angles on the frame, angles on the cross member, and all sorts of just, you know, challenging things to deal with. When we cut it out on the CNC plas table, you know, we have to open up the holes quite a bit more than we should, so that the tabs and slots fit correctly. And so because of that, there's a lot of room, wiggle room, so to say, because it's not as precise as it could be. So all that being said, now that we have like the first prototype that works and fits, we're gonna have it cut on a laser and bent on a CNC press brake, tighten up all of our holes or slots for the tab and slot setup, and then test fit that one as well to see how, you know, make sure it does fit the way it's supposed to. Just because, you know, these ones are oversized so much, there's room to kind of like twist that plate or different pieces more than there should be, and that's just the nature of designing parts with a CNC plas instead of a laser. But that being said, once we get a functional prototype with the CNC plas, then we do have a prototype done at the laser, test it, and then once that's all good, if there's no changes, then we're able to put it in production, or we make a couple changes and have another one done, and then it goes into production. So yeah, super excited, because now the Duramax, Allison, and transfer case will be all mounted in the truck for the first time. We're gonna get this bolted in, this transmission cross member, and show you guys kind of the semi-final product. So yeah, be back in a sec. You can see the transmission cross member is bolted in using a factory Duramax Allison transmission mount, and we've got room over here for our front drive shaft with the NP271, And now, for the first time, we're gonna fully take the weight off of the transmission jack. Nice. We got plenty of clearance. It's tight, but there's plenty of clearance at the floorboard. Obviously, plenty of clearance all the way up at the firewall. Transfer case clears everything, and the angle actually looks really good between here and the rear diff. Don't you think, Grant? Like all in all, we could put an angle finder on it, but
it looks pretty dang close.
It looks like it's, and we might be able to do a one-piece drive shaft instead of a two.
Yeah.
So that feels like massive progress. This is officially sitting in an OBS Ford with all of its weight on it and its final mounts. Don't worry, this is going to come out and get powder coated, but we have a lot of things that'll need to get powder coated. So for now, I'm going to assemble it the way it is, then disassemble it, have everything powder coated, and then reassemble it. And the reason being is that you never know if anything is going to need to be modified, and I'd rather not pay for powder coating multiple times. It does look like, however, we may need to relocate our air dog. I was stoked on this to be able to use the factory holes in the frame, but with the transfer case, and one of the fittings comes out right here, so that's gonna have to get moved back. But that's not a big deal.
No, not the end of the world at all.
So sweet, dude, this is insane. And check this out, the factory shift cable. You know, obviously we gotta make some brackets and whatnot and put the lever on, but it's like couldn't be any more ideal for where it's located, and then figuring out the bracket to go on the transmission for our shift linkage for the transfer case, because I think we'll end up using the bracket from like a ZF5 or an E40D that goes to the, what am I trying to say? So it uses the same shifter and shift pattern that this truck originally had, because this, I know that does work with this transfer case. The only tricky thing is there's like one mounting hole on the side, or like one spare hole here, and that's not really going to be enough. So we'll have to get a little, I don't know, we'll figure it out. That's what this whole project is, figuring out new stuff. But I'm pretty stoked on how that fits.
Yeah, I think it looks great, and it's tucked up in there nice.
Yeah. And we have room for when we do a different adapter. The transfer case won't be in the way, you know, if it's half that length.
Right.
But I can get into explaining the reasoning for that later, I guess. So, yeah, that's sweet. It's the first time this is all like fully mounted. I'm way pumped.
Right on.
So we can test drive it tomorrow.
Do I get to?
Oh, of course. I am going to take first dibs on driving it, though.
That's fair.
Yeah, you get to drive this all you want.
I can't wait.
Me neither. I want to do a big smoky burnout.
Well, what's next? What's our next step?
Next, tie up some loose ends. So we got to bolt the flex plate or put the flex plate to torque converter bolts in, and then put as much of the stuff on the front of the engine as we want to before we put the core support on.
Okay.
And then we will do core support and start figuring out all of our plumbing.
Sweet.
So, kind of moving along.
Yeah, feels like progress.
I'll show you what I'm doing on the fuel system here. Hopefully you can hear me. I will speak up, but what we got going on here is I've got the fuel rails in with the injector lines, the line to the CP3 pump, and now I need to do the feed and return lines. The factory fuel lines, or fuel supply and return, come from this side of the truck up to this fitting here would be the return, and the feed line I have over here, which goes on there, somewhere like so, so it is able to cross over the engine and go to where the factory fuel filter housing was, which would be right over here. So it comes in, goes all the way across into the fuel filter housing, and then back and into the CP3 pump down here. Well, obviously I'm not going to run the factory fuel filter housing. It wouldn't even fit over here, and we're doing an air dog to supply system. So instead of using that factory line and have it go all the way over here and then loop and then come into the CP3, I'm going to direct feed the CP3 from the air dog, nice and cleanly, just right into here. But then dealing with the return line, you've got this fuel line block setup that on here you can see you have your injector return connection for this bank of injectors, the passenger side. Come on, just stay there. And then you also have the return line that came from the fuel filter housing. Or no, this was the feed from the fuel filter housing to the CP3, I believe. So then you also have your CP3 return line here, and it would tie in to this pipe here, come back, got the fuel temperature sensor, you got this fuel rail return right here, this injector return line up to your main return. So been trying to figure out a clean solution for this, and what I've come up with, because gotta have this fuel return in the system, and we do have to have this CP3 return junction in the system, but I don't need this part of the feed line and this test port and all these other things. So my thought process is I'm going to try to cut up this block and eliminate this top section without eliminating this tab, so it still bolts to a factory, to this factory bracket here, and just eliminate this line, this piece, and this line, and clean up this block and make it nice and small so that it is just the return line. I have two of these, so I'm going to test it out on one and see if it works the way that I'm thinking it will. but it should turn out pretty clean. If I didn't do it that way, then I have to come up with some like return line block that I would have machined that has a bunch of different fittings and has a spot for the fuel sensor, for all of these things that I think might overcomplicate it. So I'm going to attempt to make this work and see how it goes. So I need to go cut that up and find out. Made some progress, got the front of the engine, we test fitted some things. It's just a bunch of back and forth now, figuring out the best way to go. So you can see here the core support is temporarily, mocked up with the cooling stack from the Power Stroke. So we've got the Power Stroke radiator, the Ford Power Stroke AC condenser, and then if I can get down in there, you'll see the 6-liter transmission cooler, and then Super Duty 7.3 intercooler. Which, on a side note, I had this sitting outside in the bed of the truck for a winter, and I had capped everything and tried to make sure it was good, but apparently those caps came off and water got in and froze and blew apart this intercooler. So that is obviously my fault. So it's gonna have to get a new intercooler, which is a bummer because this one was basically new, just like everything else on this truck. But I can cry about that later and whatever. So I'll give you a run through of where things are at in the engine bay. Fair warning, right now it's a bit cluttered because I'm doing a lot of temporarily placing things in places to see if I do this intercooler piping this way, is it going to screw up the coolant pipe routing or the wiring harness or the AC compressor lines or the power steering lines, and like just all sorts of things to figure out. And so it's a lot of like temporarily put something in and get an idea, take a little mental note, take it back out. So disclaimer for you all. So up here we got front of the engine. It's mostly together. We got to put the tensioner on and the 2 idler pulleys, but we've got our fluid dampener on, new fan pulley bracket, and then tidied up the fuel system. So as you saw the little time lapse, I cleaned this, or you may see it in the future. I don't know how I'm going to edit this, but I got rid of that feed up here. So it's just the return line, and I think it came out pretty good. It just comes back into the factory line here, and then get to keep all of these factory return lines back here. So that's handy. I got this for the wiring harness mocked up, just to figure out plumbing and whatnot, and then have our hydraulic, or our power steering to Hydro Boost line in. That's just the Ford one from an F Super Duty. As a side note, if you are doing this conversion, you are going to have to upgrade to Hydro Boost brakes because these engines obviously don't have a vacuum pump. So, but it's a worthwhile upgrade. The power steering pump will go here, and the Duramax power steering line is actually just about the perfect length, but it uses a metric thread at the Hydro Booster, and this one appears to be standard, so not sure what we're going to do there. I originally wanted the intake, the air intake, to come over here, just like a Power Stroke would. Sorry, I think it sounds like there is a tornado going through, passing the shop. And I'm in Central Oregon. We don't get tornadoes, but it is absolutely insanely windy out there. So if you hear anything funky, that's what's happening. But I was going to grab this. Is the upper coolant, upper radiator hose piece. So this guy goes right here and is kind of a problem because got this tab. You know, I talked about not having parts powder coated before you know whether you're going to modify them or not. This is one example why, because this tab is no longer necessary and it's just going to be in the way. But on top of that, this connection right here is crucial. The water, you know, it's the coolant feed, or one of the coolant lines for the turbo, and then you got your, you know, outlet here. And by having this piece in here and making this piece factory, it really screws up my desire to have the intake go on this side of the engine bay versus that side of the engine bay. Now, I could modify this and plumb it and be able to make it, you know, all custom so that it does work. But my issue with that is obviously we are developing all the parts for this to be able to be you know, for other people to be able to buy and do this conversion. And so I'm trying to make it to where you have to modify as little things as possible on both the like Duramax components and the Ford components. So as of right now, it kind of looks like the intake is going to have to go on the passenger side, which will, I guess, give us an opportunity to build a custom dual battery tray for the driver's side, which we've had requests for. So that could work. But as you can see, if I tried to bring this all to the driver's side, you know, the air intake, it's already tight for one right here. Let's just get a look at this beautiful turbo. Yeah. It's already tight going this direction. And then we add in the wiring harness bracket here, the intercooler pipe, which drops down here, the AC line, should be right here, and then to try and bring the intake, you know, up and over all of that to here poses some issues, especially once you get this this hose in, the upper radiator hose. So whether you care about this process or not, that is one of the things working out. But I do have some cool things to show you. We'll start with radiator hoses. So the first win that I've had so far is the factory Duramax radiator hose actually fits with the 7.3 radiator. Like, fits pretty much perfect. And that, yeah, that's a giant plus. I wasn't expecting that. So that's kind of cool. The next thing that would have been perfect, but wasn't quite, is the lower radiator hose. So this had a 7.3 power stroke in it, obviously, and if you look right here, I've got, let's see if that will help, the power stroke lower radiator hose, you know, to the intercooler, and then right here is where it would go into the water pump. So it is like, it's almost like it's meant to be, except the water pump housing outlet is like a hair too big for this hose. First thing I'm going to try to do to remedy this is to take this hose off of the junction here that goes up to the water pump, and I'm going to go down to the parts house, see if I can, you know, con one of the parts guys into letting me just go back and look at all the different hoses and see if there is like a factory hose that will work, you know, in place of this. Just because factory hoses are easier to obtain. It would be cheaper for the end customer to not have to pay for a custom made stainless lower radiator hose, and maintenance wise, you know, if you lose a radiator hose on a road trip, it's nice to be able to just take that part number into the parts house and get the hose. That being said, if we can't do that, then I will probably just build that out of stainless pipe and then do, you know, just hose silicone, not sure what material, but connectors just with 2 clamps at the radiator side and the water pump side, so that also is pretty fail proof. But it would be cool if there was a hose off the shelf that did work. And crazy enough, if this one was just a little bit bigger, you know, diameter wise, it would fit. So, you know, that we're gonna see how that goes. But the next thing I have to show you guys is the ECM and TCM. So the engine control module and the transmission control module for the Duramax. So what I did was I decided I want all of this to look as if it came from the factory this way as possible. And obviously there will be some things that don't look that way, but that's the goal. And to make it just as serviceable as possible so that it's not like so crazy custom that if anything were to happen on a road trip, you're just screwed unless you have access to like a full shop, you know. So the ECM and TCM, I decided I wanted to mount where the Power Stroke IDM went, right here. The Power Stroke had the injector driver module right here and the ECM right here, or the PCM, whatever, powertrain control module, engine control module. Correct me in the comments, I guess, for whatever it's called, but this is where the PCM goes on gas trucks, on diesel trucks, everything. So for this, we're not going to use it anymore, and we're making a really sweet cover plate that looks factory, you know, has the gasket and everything, but has no hole in it for the wiring connectors. So that'll be nice for all of your engine swaps, whether it be, you know, what we're doing, or a Cummins, or any engine swap, or if you're keeping a Ford gas engine and you're getting rid of the EEC fuel system, you no longer need that there. So it'll just be useful for a lot of people. So back to the Duramax ECM TCM. This is what I came up with here. Here we have the LBZ Duramax ECM, engine control module, and we have the Allison transmission control module from the LBZ Duramax truck. So I designed this bracket that is 3D printed out of like super strong material, and it's got a a nice little set screw in here, and yeah, I'm pretty proud of it, I guess. It felt good to make. So the ECM slides in, then you can tighten it down right here at the set screw, and then print it or put some nuts into the print, and the TCM bolts right on here. So I'll show you that if anybody's curious, or if you're even still watching at this point, not tired of listening to me figure out all of my problems on the camera. Yeah, so this, you can see we're just threading these in. Now we have a fully contained, module box system here. It's much easier to install, one piece at a time, and it's not actually mounted there, but or bolted in place, but you can see like the bolt hole right there. So it'll go right there, and there's still all of the factory wiring for some of the factory wiring for the Power Stroke in here, which is making it a little extra crowded, but it'll look really nice and OEM just sitting right there where the IDM went. And the cool thing is too, is that in the Duramax, the computer, those two computers were mounted up here on the fan shroud, or radiator shroud, somewhere up here. And when we tested the harness, you can literally just flip it over, and it's like the perfect length for mounting them right there. So pretty stoked on that. It will be a little bit of a pain to fully install them, because you'll have to pull the fender liner, because there's one bolt underneath the ECM that you have to put in first, and then slide the ECM in. But honestly, not a big deal, because how often are you actually pulling the ECM? It's pretty much never. So yeah, that is where things are at. I think, what else? What's the last thing that I was, so the final thing I'll show you guys on this video, I believe, is going to do the Ford AC compressor, because this is where the AC compressor mounts. Even in the Chevrolet, this is where the alternator mounts. So the goal is to do the Ford AC compressor so that we can use the factory Ford AC lines. And they all fit. Just got to make an adapter plate to bolt the AC compressor to this bracket. So that will be, I think that would be pretty sweet, because having to make custom AC lines, then if you have to have a shop charge it, they're like, oh, this isn't factory, we won't warranty it, all of that stuff. And it's just trying to do everything as simple and easy for the end user as possible. So it takes a whole lot more time to do it this way on on our end, but that's okay. Some people may think it's a bit ridiculous to be putting this much effort into this Duramax swap, like to make the parts for other people to be able to use them or buy them and use them as well, which is entirely possible that nobody else will be interested, but who knows? Maybe somebody will, and at the end of the day, it's always good practice for drawing and developing and just thinking through your processes. And yeah, I'm super excited. So I think that's going to be the end of this video. Thank you guys for watching. As always, if you want to help support the channel, share this video with a friend, comment below what you think about what's going on. And if you're interested, check out, we got shirts and hats and other goodies on our website, carrickcustoms.com. And yeah, let me know what you guys think. Comment, try to be nice, I guess, if you can, like we're all human here. If you don't like it though, that's fine. You can tell me that too. So thank you again for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.